getting to the video and the incident itself, are you at a point where you can give us, based on your understanding of the investigation at this point and that video, can you give us a narrative of what occurred?
I think the video speaks for itself, and that's why I had Under Sheriff Debris kind of talk through, because to show the different stages of that stop and what had transpired. I don't feel comfortable right now speaking about it because we are in an investigation, and it's and I'm not sure when it will be completed. My hope and my experience, unfortunately, with other shootings, it does move rather quickly, and I would hope, I'm pulling this potentially out as a date, but I can never say, because it could take turns as we go through the investigation. But as it's moving along at this point, I would expect maybe the first week of December, the investigation should be complete. That's when I will write a decision letter of how to proceed. And at that time, depending on my, decision, then, we can have this dialogue. But I know right now, with the demands that are being made of the release of the tape, my efforts are being diverted now to fight a court action. And so we're going to have a court action over a tape that I'm probably going to eventually release in a couple weeks, because there is a feeling we're not being transparent and letting it out. But we did, to all family members, and the family members that are asking part of this petition, they saw it in its entirety with the shooting when he died, their son Robbie and the sibling and grandson. So they did see it first before the media, and they were able to freeze frame, ask questions. They had a dialogue, and what we were able to answer, we did. And then when the media with filming, we also, we talked through. I did interrupt at times because I did not, and we allowed the media to ask questions that were there, the news outlets, and I did interrupt because there's certain things we can't get into as part of the investigation at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As far as that footage, are we going to get an opportunity to see that today, or okay?
No. You mean right now?
Well,
no.
I don't know about
no.
right now.
No, we did it as a press conference.
Okay.
I decided at that point a press conference to give a viewing.
Sure.
The public was in the room. I know that there's some stories circulating on town that we precluded public, and we targeted certain media outlets. I can honestly tell you, we just did the local normal that we do, and we assumed, which now I'm learning, and I know people will say, well, you're in office, you should have known that, and that's not true. I've never been besieged and of something of this magnitude since I've been in office, so of the media outlets that have been calling nationwide. So at this point, lesson learned in the future, I guess I need to designate staff and take them off other cases to deal with the media. And at this point, the press conference was to get, I assumed that when footage was taken that like AP or someone they share with others, and I guess that doesn't occur and everybody wants their own perspective, and I'm not sure how to address that now. But to release the actual tape, I am not doing that until the investigation is done. When the investigation is done, and depending on where it goes after, whatever decision I make, that will be the timing of when it would be released.
Okay, very good. I think I'm about out of questions.
Well, I can give,
that you wanted to highlight here?
Well, I think that also of that I think the public should know. In March of 2017, there was a revision to the Wyoming Public Records Act, and it specifically addressed police recordings. And it was from, getting ahead of when do you release these police recordings and how that comes about. And I know that there was a lot of drafts that were out there and how that would look. And at the end of the day, I think people are still going on what it said initially and then where the law actually went. And I think that's important to note because it basically, and I have it before me, indicates that that there's certain ways that we can release records, and it clearly the Records Act provides that when we're in an investigation that we can deny the access to it. And also there's ethic reasons too as an attorney that we don't release video and different items because of in an investigation, if there's criminal charges, there's due process rights that I have to be aware of. You know, I have to protect the victim's right and balancing and with the potential of a suspect being charged. So there's that portion of the Open Records Act, but specifically when that law went into the effect, it basically outlined that with police recordings that you can deny those, and or I may release it. So it gave me that discretion to make that determination. And one of the specific that it said in there is when there was serious bodily injury or a shooting of this nature, that gave me the authority to do it if I chose. It never says in the Open Records Act how I'm to release it or what I'm to do. And so I'm denying, if you will, the release of the actual video right now, but I'm giving access to it for viewing, which is, I did it in a press conference, had it done that manner. So in line with the new law, that's the way I approached it. And I felt, I at the time thought I was being open and transparent, but, you know, I know because of the anger and grieving, they're wanting it to get out more of the shooting itself. But I think if you take a look at channel or the various news outlets, it's very, it shows a lot.
Obviously, the investigation's ongoing, so at this point, I don't suppose you would be able to say whether you're looking at potential charges here, if that is an avenue that this might go down?
That's always a potential. When you're looking at an officer-involved shooting, that's the main, you're looking at whether that use of force in light of the facts and circumstances was reasonable and justified or unjustified. And that's a different standard than criminal standard. But you're looking at that, and if it is unreasonable and unjustified on those facts and circumstances, then there is the next step of looking at potential criminal charging, and that's a separate decision. But at this point, looking at the facts, we're still assessing where, you know, where in my office, where this would move.
Okay. And again, without getting too much into the investigation and the specifics, some of that stuff you guys can't talk about yet, do you think that this incident is going to spur a larger conversation within the community about law enforcement and the interaction of officers with people who are known to have mental health issues?
Absolutely. That is that has been why I want to focus, and I believed in openness and spewing it and getting it out right now. The questions that are being asked and what I read on social media right now are issues we do need to, as a community, to address. A lot of the issues stem from how we approach and de-escalate, you know, in situations. If we know there's mental illness, there needs to always be training. These are conversations we can get into: policies, procedures, how we handle just our hiring practices. We can look at everything and use this as an opportunity to learn, you know, from an unfortunate situation and learning and an unfortunate, you know, a person that was killed, you know, whether justified or unjustified. We have a person who died, and I think everyone's grieving in some respect and wants to make sure that we do the right thing for the future and that the community knows we're doing the right thing and they can feel safe.
You mentioned hiring practices, and I don't think it would be appropriate at this point, while the investigation is ongoing, for me to ask you to criticize another public official, so that's not what I'm going to do. But at this point, as the county attorney, do you have questions about the hiring of the officer who was involved in the shooting?
One of the record requests that's coming from this petition is they're wanting the release of the personnel file. And as you're aware, and it's been all over social media, of his prior contact in shootings that occurred in Vegas. At this point, I can't comment on that, but I will tell you it's an issue that's been raised by our community, and it's an issue that we as elected officials are accountable to responding and addressing. And I take that seriously, that we need to do that. But whenever you're in these situations, we need to be listening to the public and hearing what their concerns are. So I think it's a self-reflection of everyone in the county and our offices to look inward and figure out how we could have done it differently. But I can't comment on, how the sheriff's office hiring practice, only that, I think in weeks to come, this will be a conversation for all of us to have and to move forward and taking and examining it.
In lieu of us seeing the video today, and I asked you about it before, I don't want to press you on it to the point of rudeness, but I did want to ask, in lieu of us seeing the video, it would be really helpful for us to have even a sparse narrative of what did occur and what's represented on that body camera footage.
Do you have the video that's on social media on your website right now?
I don't believe that I have.
Yeah, it's on your Facebook. It's been posted there,
Oh,
I
is it?
believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from Channel 5 and the other channels in Wyoming. Is it K2? I don't know where.
Oh, okay.
It's on there.
Channel 5 in Cheyenne.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you would take a look at that and pull it up, they did a very good job, I believe, of using all of the cameras and the audio to combine them and to provide an overview of what transpired. I think and I think other news stations shared their video and looked at it from those lenses, and it gave a very accurate overview of what had happened. And probably the best is to look at the video, and
Sure.
that's what we shared openly and what was put up there for social media, because I've seen it on social media. It is accurate. The only thing missing is the actual person being shot. I mean, you're hearing the audio of it.
Right.
You're seeing the video from the vehicle and the camera. And a lot of it, because of angles, you're not going to see any more. And so people, I hear on social media, think we're hiding. There isn't much more, unfortunately, because when the shooting occurred, it's a tight time frame of what had occurred quickly, and that the camera angles from where you're going to see is what have been shown. And I believe I know that the camera on the body camera came unhooked because of the way that it cuts off a lot of what had happened. But we see a lot through the vehicle, and we have what we can hear through audio too still, up until the cutoff. So there's a lot that what you're seeing is, to a degree, all we have.
As far as body cameras and their use, I mean, it's been more in the forefront nationally the last couple of years. I think their importance is pretty well universally agreed upon. Given the failure of the officer's body camera in this situation, is that something that your office is going to look at, or you think that law enforcement locally should examine to ensure that we're not going to get into this kind of situation and have that type of failure?
That is a conversation, absolutely, for law enforcement. And I think from this, you see a lot of those issues that will need to be addressed, and also have conversations with the public about and what we're doing and how we're addressing it. We've been fortunate in Albany County. We've had body cams, car cams. We've been very good about having that. It works both ways so that everyone has that transparency of what happened. Unfortunately, with electronics, they fail. There's problems, and we need to address those back to the manufacturer, whomever, how that occurs.
You mentioned social media, and so I'm assuming that you're pretty aware of how that has trended since the shooting and what some of the reactions have been. I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to some of the criticism that I believe the way it was phrased generally was that yourself and Sheriff O'Malley perhaps weren't as transparent immediately after the shooting because of the timing in the election. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah, that this is we've had other shootings here in our community, officer-related shootings, and you will see we handled it similar. This one actually more transparent by my releasing of that video, but you can't release video immediately because we had to talk to the officer. We have to interview witnesses. If I was to release that video before the officer spoke or those witnesses, it would taint what they were perceiving and what they observed, separate and part. So good investigative technique, you would not release that video until all of those witnesses had been interviewed. Hence, that's why I waited till when we were. I would have done it sooner. Then we had the holiday that hit. And I made a determination on that Tuesday morning, this is how quickly it went, and that we could release it because I was working with DCI every day. They have worked many man-hours to move this investigation along, and knowing where they were to know where I felt comfortable releasing. That does not mean that DCI agreed with the way what I did, and they were not present as part of this. I felt it as being transparent to release it. The election was not a factor. I know that people were going to believe what they want to believe, but I can tell you that was not what was going through our minds to hide for the election. As a matter of fact, my attention was diverted to what can we do, what we needed to gather in evidence, and being part of that team to direct that investigation to make sure we did it thoroughly and getting all that we needed to get at that time.
Sure. I don't know that I have much more.
Okay.
I know you hit a couple other things, but is there anything else that you wanted to add or touch on here?
No, I'm just sorry for the family and their loss, and I'm sorry that we're in this situation. We do have, recently we formed the Albany County Mental Health Board, where we were moving in a direction of getting protocols for how we handle mentally ill. We were working on specifically involuntary commitments, emergency detentions, the interaction of law enforcement, all of these items. But you know, it's unfortunate, you know, that we didn't have that in place sooner. But I don't know in this case. I'm not sure how that would have played in. Right now, I'm still looking at that to figure it out, and I know there will be a lot of conversations that this will be factored into as we move forward. And I hope that we move to a lot of good policy and changes as we move forward and thoughtful dialogue as we do this. I know there's a lot of anger and distrust right now, and that's why I'm coming forward to kind of, you know, let you know I understand that, and we're trying to move as quickly to build that back up to know that we need to do something and how we handle and move forward. But at this point, I'm trying to focus on the investigation to get it completed, and I wanted to speak, and I'm sure there'll be a court case filed, which will delay our investigation and moving forward because they want the video. But the video is not the issue. The issue is having these conversations we're having. So that's basically what I wanted to make sure I was getting and talking to people about.
Absolutely. One last thing, and then I swear I'll let you go. You had mentioned DCI and the release of the video.
Mm-hmm.
The way it sounded to me, and not to put you on the hot seat here, but it sounded like DCI was not totally on board with the viewing of the video by media. And so could you kind of detail that dynamic a little bit?
That was not exactly communicated in that manner, but they are in the middle of an investigation. It is not standard protocol and practice to release a video viewing. And, you know, let's clarify, release versus viewing in a press queue, see it. In the middle of an investigation. That is highly, highly unusual. Mm-hmm. It's not been done in the state of Wyoming. And to make that decision for our community was not the direction they would have gone in their investigation and part of their investigation. I feel that it has not compromised the investigation. Sometimes we have to find ways to be open but yet continue what we're doing, and I'm doing that. But release of the video would not be beneficial at this time with the investigation, one-on-one. Now, at a point in the future, I will be amenable to releasing that. And even then, just so you know, Wyoming law says I can deny it up until, the point that if there's no further, how should I say, criminal or anything, I can, if there will be criminal, I can deny it. So, I mean, I've chosen to be liberal in the interpretation of the law, even though people feel we're not being transparent, to push that out. We may not have agreed that I haven't put that disc out there. That's not what this is about. So I felt I did what was right. There will be people who disagree with me and they're angry, and and I respect their anger, but at this point we are moving as quickly as I can go with the investigation.
Okay, very good. That's all I have.
Thank
you so much.
You're welcome.